Just like The Flash, the review portion of this video is going to be lightning fast because we don't have any deep thoughts or feelings about this film. And I don't think anyone really does. It's not that kind of movie. It wasn't the shining beacon of a brighter future that DC wanted it to be after revamping the DC universe with James Gunn at the helm, and it certainly wasn't worth all of the marketing and last-minute buzz the movie generated. It ended up being just another forgettable superhero movie that played around with the multiverse idea and leaned heavily into the power of nostalgia to capture viewers. Now, the story around this film's production is infinitely more entertaining than the movie is. The fact that this movie ever made it to theaters is a small miracle in and of itself. Initially announced in 2014 and slated to release in 2018, The Flash burned through 4 different directors and at least 2 screenwriters. The movie would bounce around between 7 different official release dates as Warner Brothers stumbled out of the gate in its attempt to launch a franchise to rival the MCU. The Flash TV show had even come and gone before this movie made it to theaters. And to make matters worse, Ezra Miller, who plays the Flash, decided to lose his mind in 2022 and come out as an unstable creep. In that year alone, he'd go on to commit 3 violent assaults, be the target of multiple restraining orders, and allegedly run off with an 18-year-old girl who he had been grooming since she was 12. And this was after he threatened her father with a gun while they were at dinner. Oh, and another family made similar accusations of Miller grooming their daughter since she was 12. No exaggeration, look it up. Somehow, at a time when people were losing their jobs for their medical choices, Miller managed to stay employed and the movie pushed on ahead, eventually settling on a June 16, 2023 release date. Well, June 16th finally arrived and no one really seems to give a shit about this movie one way or the other. Just like The Flash, this movie came and went in the blink of an eye and left no real impression on the viewing public. But let's get in a quick recap before going on. So The Flash deals with a time-warping multiverse because multiverses are
so hot right now.
Barry Allen, aka The Flash, aka Ezra Miller the pedophile, is working to exonerate his father in his mother's murder, hoping to free him from prison. His dad tells him to move on with his life and forget about trying to free him. Then The Flash, get this, runs really fast. And this seemingly turns back time and allows Barry to toy around with the past to change the present and the future. How original. He gets the bright idea to subtly change the past and prevent his mother from ever dying. But when he tries to return from this time, a mystery villain pushes him out of his time travel portal thingy and strands him in a different timeline. Here, his mother is alive, his dad is still around, but his younger self is present as well. OG Flash theorizes that younger Flash shouldn't be here, and it becomes obvious he doesn't understand what he's gotten mixed up in. In order to prevent any other serious alterations of the past, the OG Flash takes the young Flash to go get his powers because that just so happens to have happened on this day in the past that he ended up in. During the lightning strike, the new Flash gets his powers, but the original Flash loses his own. Oh no. Well, this day is not going as planned. General Zod from Krypton shows up and threatens to destroy Earth in search of Kal-El, aka Superman. But Superman isn't coming, so Barry has to go in search of him. None of the other heroes seem to exist in this timeline except Batman. At Wayne Manor, however, he finds that Batman is older, crazier, and less Ben Affleck-y. Michael Keaton explains how dumb and lazy the multiverse ideas are using a bowl of spaghetti. Though it takes some time for him to come around, Keatman decides to help Barry out in his quest to save this timeline from Zod, and takes the 2 Barrys to Russia in search of Superman, where they find Superman's cousin, Supergirl, instead. After freeing her, young Barry learns that his mother dies in the original Flash's timeline, which makes him sad. Although I don't know why, considering he doesn't live in that timeline, but whatever. Original Flash works up a way for him to get his powers back, and through some trial and error, he's back to his speedy ways. The 4 of them, the 2 Flashes, Supergirl, and Batman, set out to face down Zod. Eventually, Batman and Supergirl are killed, and the Flashes, having learned nothing, return to the time travel portal place and try it again, with the same result. They do this over and over, but Supergirl and Batman die every time. The OG Flash recognizes these deaths as an inevitability and tries to convince his younger self, who refuses to give up, to stop trying. As young Flash keeps trying, the mysterious villain from earlier returns, showing themselves to be a version of the young Flash who tried to save everyone a million times. The young Flash ends up sacrificing himself to stop the cycle and destroy the villain, and the original Flash returns to stop himself from altering the timeline in the first place. He has an admittedly touching scene with his mom one last time before leaving her to her fate, and he returns to his timeline where everything is back to normal. Except his dad now has the evidence he needs to get exonerated, and Batman is now George Clooney. Oops. And Jason Momoa, fresh off the best role of his career.
Here we go!
shows up as drunk Aquaman in a post-credit scene that had no meaning or significance, and that's a wrap. You know, it's pretty telling that the main selling point of the Flash movie is a Batman character from 30 years ago. Just shows you how little faith they have in the main character to bring people to theaters. And for this story, who can blame them? It's just 2 hours of the Flash playing with himself, and everything else was pretty much just what if the movie. Some of the nostalgia bait was actually pretty good, we will say. Michael Keaton as Batman, his old Batmobile, even Adam West's Batman and Christopher Reeve's Superman were cool to see. And seeing Nicolas Cage's Superman was pretty funny. But that's pretty much all the movie had to offer. Nearly all of the humor fell flat in this film, which is probably the one thing that most people expected to be able to count on. It just wasn't landing. The visuals are decent from what I could tell, but to be honest, let's just say I wasn't watching this movie in high quality on the big screen. Now, while this movie wasn't made under James Gunn's reign over the DCU, it isn't going to give the franchise the early win they were hoping for in this new era. Like I said before, it's just another forgettable big-budget superhero movie. As for the reception, well, Rotten Tomatoes puts the audience score at 84%. And I use the word puts on purpose because lately the Rotten Tomatoes audience scores are looking more astroturfed than ever. This movie is nowhere near an 84 and everyone knows it. Places like Metacritic are putting this movie at a 58 in relative terms, and that's much more reflective of what people are saying about the film. But what's most telling is the box office drop-off for The Flash. The opening weekend box office registered at a paltry $55 million to begin with, 30% lower than expectations. But the following weekend, there was a 73% drop-off in box office numbers, and now the film has barely surpassed its production budget, to say nothing of the marketing budget. It's an out-and-out flop, and not worth your time either in our opinion. James Gunn said this was one of the best superhero films ever made. Now, he has to say stuff like that to market the brand and present the DCU in a positive light, but if any part of him was being truthful with that statement, DC fans should be very worried about his vision for the franchise. Ezra Miller should probably be institutionalized, and we don't think you should support any projects he's associated with. If he's going to continue on as he has, and the DCU wants to tie their franchise to his sinking ship, then bon voyage. It's quite a spectacle to watch Warner Brothers squander the likes of Batman and Superman on this DCEU/DCU misadventure, but ironically, it's not spectacle enough for people to go watch it in theaters. But what about you? Were you tricked into thinking The Flash was going to be a surprise hit? Are you more concerned with James Gunn's tenure at the lead of the DCU than you were 3 weeks ago? Let us know in the comments. And as always, leave a like on the video if you liked it, and subscribe to HateWatchers for reviews of other current shows and movies. Thanks for running alongside us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.